Everybody thinks it's just a fence and they don't put a whole lot of thought into their design, basically just saying as long as it's standing upright today, it'll be good to go. But as you can see behind me, one of the things that gets forgotten an awful lot is wind. And we wanted to know exactly what kind of an effect wind was having on our fences. So a year and a half ago, we set out to find out what our fences could withstand the way we build them. We found somebody with an airboat and put it to a test with 126-mile-an-hour winds. Some posts get concreted, and more commonly today, we're seeing no dig fences, which means that we're driving something into the ground. Basically what we did was we put together comparisons of concrete versus driven to see how they both stood up. So the first thing we're going to show you is the standard 6-foot fence that's dug and set in concrete, which everybody seems to think is the gold standard of building fence. That's coming up right here. Today we're in Florida and we're going to make our own hurricane to wind test fences. Everybody talks about how strong their fences are, but nobody really shows it, and we're going to do it with this. The most common question we get down here in Florida is, what's it gonna be rated for?
Wait, hold on. The manufacturer tells you what it's rated for. We don't need to do this.
How did they test that? I have no idea. Did they test different scenarios of set depth and how deep it is and how much concrete you use? Did they test any of that? We don't know. Today, we're not gonna guess at what makes a good strong fence. We wanna show you, even as a 30-year veteran to this industry, I have no idea how they come up with these wind load ratings. It's just a little line on every brochure that says our fence is rated for X. Today, we're gonna find out, do certain things matter? What really got me to thinking about all this is when I lost a fence project recently to somebody that said that their fence was rated for Miami-Dade wind load rating. Probably the most infamous wind load rating in all of Florida. Something like 120, don't quote me on that, I don't know. But to get that wind load rating, you have to do a lot of stuff. You have got to put aluminum inside each one of these posts, inside each one of these rails, inside each one of these pickets. So for somebody to claim that their fence is rated to Miami-Dade is just absolute falsehood. So I called up our manufacturer, the one that we use, and I said, what's the wind load rating? And they said, probably about 75 miles an hour, which is where most manufacturers rate their fences. We're gonna find out today. To get that 75, you've got to have the correct installation. And most people in Florida aren't using good installation techniques, which is why you see so many fences that look like this after a slight wind hits them. I've got tons of evidence of this stuff all over our Facebook and TikTok pages of people setting fences poorly. Most of them can be ripped out by hand, and that is not going to give you any kind of wind load rating whatsoever. We've done our best to replicate different scenarios that will lead maybe to different results as far as wind load rating.
So I could do the least amount of work and still have a fence that is rated for 75-mile-per-hour winds.
Yeah, potentially, because when we start driving posts, you know what everybody tells us? We're lazy, we're doing it wrong, we're cutting corners. But is that true? Fencing's hard work, and if we can make it easier at the same time making it better for the customer, then I'm 100% on board with doing that. So to do all this, we called in a little bit of help. And I said a little, that's probably not right. We called in a lot of help. So we called in John Wathy, who is, where are you out of, John?
Cape Coral, Florida.
Cape Coral, Florida. You know anything about hurricanes?
Just went through one.
And then how many fences are still standing?
0.
Now, I am not here to say that we can build a hurricane-rated fence. And acts of God, like a tornado runs over a fence, I'm just like, I'm sorry. But we can at least get it to where 40-mile-an-hour breeze doesn't blow it over. So you're probably thinking now, how are we going to determine how fast the wind's blowing? That's where this comes into play. This is called an
Anemometer.
So with this, we should be able to see exactly how much wind we can generate with this airboat to put against the fence. I bet I can blow on this harder than you can. You spit on me.
26.73.
That's weak. I just want you to know I have asthma. I automatically get 5 miles an hour.
Okay, blow. Oh wait, hold on. It's not on max.
You just wasted my good breath. That was my good breath.
We're ready now. 25.24.
I get 5, so I won. I'm asthmatic.
Self-proclaimed.
That was super weak.
16.86. Hold on.
That was even worse.
What did you do wrong? That was 10.8.
Yeah, no, you had it the right way. You just really suck at this. I huffed and I puffed and I got it up to 32.8. Hey, let's blow some fence over. Hey, can we get on with this? My eyes are getting really hot in me.
Oh, this feels like Wyoming.
Just kind of slowly ramp us up. Oh yeah.
96.8.
Yeah, yours is 100. I got 100 too. If you got max, that's 100. That's 100. Yeah, we got 100 miles an hour right here. Man, let's do the first one. The first test we were doing is on a 6 foot tall, 8 foot wide section set 2 feet deep. And down here it has, you can see that 1-60 means there's 160 pound bag of concrete in each one of these holes. It was soup, so the concrete's not the best concrete in the world by any means, not giving us the best yield strength. But this is typical of Florida fence installers. They're using 160 pound bag on every post. Some of them are doing 3 feet deep, which we have a couple sections down will be 3 feet deep, but this one is only 2 feet deep. And we're calling this a poorly set vinyl fence, something resembling what you'd see when a fence is leaning. So let's see what it can do. She leaning hard, and that's exactly why all these fences lean. All the concrete in most cases goes in the hole with loose dirt. Nobody's tamping anything. It's just get it in there, maybe a little light pack, and then that's it. And so that's why fences lean. You can see that post is leaning like crazy. But you're saying you got 100, huh?
Mine says 99.8.
Wind is not always straight. Wind can change. In hurricanes, you could get north, south, east, and west winds all in the same thing. So it could run a circle on every one of your fences. And that's what's so devastating. So now what he's gonna do is he's gonna kick that rudder change the direction of the wind a little bit. We're gonna see how this affects the remaining section. I don't know what I got. I forgot to
Beat the
reset.
crap out of me.
Hey, you got some stuff going on the backside here.
We definitely have some kinkage here.
Wow.
All these posts you could pull out very easily. Surprisingly, I'm going to say this, I am absolutely shocked at the fact that the fence didn't kink faster. Something to think about when you're talking about that though is how brittle is the vinyl. These posts didn't break. They actually just kinked and not actually broke, and that's probably what broke this rail here is when this post kinked over. So wind direction makes a huge difference. The minute he starts kicking that rudder and changing how the wind's blowing and which direction it's coming from, think of being in a neighborhood and you get those swirling winds, that's when everything falls apart. And we start losing fences at much lower wind speeds than when it's just straight on and it's a nice, steady, consistent wind. That makes all the difference in the world. Don't you say? Hello?
I wasn't really listening to you. I was just staring at that.
I was listening.
What do you think?
I would agree.
Yeah. And what I was saying earlier is in a hurricane situation, we have winds that basically circle. You could be on the leading edge, the trailing edge, the leeward side, the windward side. And so it basically, throughout the 24-hour part of the day, you could have winds coming out of east, north, south, and west. So it's not continuous from one direction. It's constantly changing. And that's what's devastating. Man, now I'm having fun. This is fun. And this post is trashed. This concrete's not getting the job done. Look how easy that comes out.
That's exactly what we're seeing. Where the hurricane just came through, exact same thing. We're going back, pulling the post and replacing the fence, and it's literally that easy.
This is typical failure. I would attribute all that to very poorly set posts. The other comment we get on our channel is, why do you use so much concrete? As you know, if you watch our channel, we stab the post inside the concrete. So there's concrete inside the post, outside the post. And if the post doesn't fold over, that post is in exactly the same spot after the windstorm as it was before the windstorm. Big difference.
The amount of concrete as well.
We basically figure 1/10 of a yard per hole. That would take probably 5 60-pound bags to get 1/10 of a yard per hole. When people ask us, why do you use so much dang concrete? Because we're trying to do things right when we do set them in concrete. Okay, earplugs, let's do it again. Next up, we have a 6 foot tall, 8 foot section set 2 feet deep, 160-pound bag. And when I say set well, what I'm referring to is that when we set the concrete in there, when we had dirt at the bottom of the post, we tamped that down, then we put the concrete in there wet, had that all in there good, and then the little bit of dirt that we put in at the top of the post, we packed all that down. So that's what I mean when I say set well. And this is by Florida standards. This is not by SWI standards. So that's what well set means. Now, you're probably looking at it saying, hey, this looks like an 8 foot section. This looks like a 6 foot section. We'll be able to see what a 6 foot section does compared to an 8 foot section and whether or not there's any difference. All the U-channel is screwed off on both sides. There is no rail locks in the top rails.
So what I'm noticing with mine is the second this blows apart, all this wind starts rushing through and I get that high reading. Right before it broke apart, I had a lower wind reading of around like 50, 60.
So you'll see on mine, I've only got about 60-mile-an-hour winds. I was above the fence where all the air was flowing past it. They had higher winds down low. Mine was only at 60 miles an hour when this thing blew apart. Big difference. I think that's why we saw that rated so high. I don't think that fence is rated that high. I think if we put that thing back together, because this is set well. Now, let's look and see. Oh yeah,
There's
she's
some lean
leaning.
in the middle here.
You can see, same thing. And we kinked that post over right here. This post is kinked. Same thing. That was 60-mile-an-hour wind up here.
Number 2 is definitely not hurricane rated.
So I'm gonna do the same thing on this, and I'm gonna hold mine high so that we get that rush past and you guys keep yours low and I won't get that peak reading. I think that's more accurate. So just to prove to you that these don't come out, like I cannot get this thing to come out right now. It is not coming out. So the next test on this one is going to be 6 foot tall, 6 foot wide sections set 3 feet deep. Now there's one caveat. This U-channel is screwed off. This U-channel over here is not, it's floating. We'll see if it makes a difference when this panel blows apart versus this one, given the fact that the U-channel is screwed on this side and it isn't on this side. Let's do it. I didn't see a difference U-channel screwed or not screwed, did you? It looked like they both went at the same time. But I got 76.8 miles an hour, which is, I would consider tropical storm rating. And that's what most manufacturers will tell you that their unaltered, basically virgin systems are good for. So this is making sense. Now down here, he got 93, and Dan, you got 110?
110.
Right before that, I was holding around 78.
So, and that's, makes perfect sense. It's kinked. This one's 160-pound bag. And now, I can pull the post out. This is the post I tried to pull earlier. Let's see if I can pull it. This one's still set pretty good, but I can pull it. It did loosen it for sure, because I got it to come up.
It kinked lower here. Instead of kinking up here, it kinked down low, close to the ground.
It did, yeah. The kink's a lot high, a lot lower, and that's what you expect when you have something that's set firmly. Like if we have concrete, we expect the post to kink right at the top of the concrete. If we're set in soil, we expect the kink to actually be lower in the soil because there's nothing firm there, so it kinks lower, and we're gonna see that kink probably occur about that far below the soil on a driven post. But the better set it is, the lower the kink is. It makes perfect sense. I don't think U-channels made a difference. I still like screwing them off though, because it does hide that unsightly gap. You don't get that air gap and stuff. It just looks better. Ooh. I bet this fence isn't gonna be rated for very much wind at all. I bet we kink some posts here. That's gonna be next. 8-foot fence, 6-foot sections, 3 rails. We did put the rail in the middle. There are versions of this where the rail's up here. What we wanted to show was the strongest version possible, and that would be putting the rail where the most flex is capable, and that's right here in the center of the panel. So we used a little more material to do that, but wanted to give it the best chance. So 8-foot tall, 6-foot wide, set 3 feet deep, 2 50-pound bags of quickset concrete in each one of these holes. So they're all the way up. So they should be set very well. I can't pull it out. No, I bet we lose it at 50. So the highest I could get it was 60 miles an hour. It doesn't surprise me that this kinked over. It does surprise me a little bit that this didn't blow apart, but we've got a lot of really good reinforcement here. These are really tight holes, so the rails went in there super tight, which means even though we don't have rail locks, we have really good crimps that are holding this. Like we had to fight to get the rails in these super tight holes, so that makes a huge difference how sloppy or tight the holes are even routed.
Does the post pull out? I don't know, the whole thing's heavy.
No, this is... They're not pulling out.
They're coming.
Yeah,
Are
I
they?
got it.
I got mine.
They're not a little wobbled out and loose, but they did break free.
One caveat, we did set this the Sakrete recommended way, where we put it in there dry and then just added water. That was as per the bag. Take that for what you will.
Here again, we kinked pretty low to the ground.
Yeah, so they're set good.
You know, those first ones were a lot looser all said and done, and they kinked higher, and I think that was probably a bit because the ground was giving so much.
Now that we've done the dug traditional method with concrete, we wanted to know how our no-dig method actually stacks up and how it fares to high wind situations. Is everything going to hold together well, or is it going to end up looking like this? The thing is to try and figure out at what depth we achieve maximum stickability, where it doesn't blow over, where the soil can actually support the post. The first set here is going to be 2 foot, then we're going to go to 3 foot driven depth, then we're going to go 3.5, which is what we do here in Florida. We drive our post 3.5 feet deep, and then down at the very end we're going to do 8 foot tall fence. I'm doing things the way we would build it. If I was designing this fence for a consumer or a customer's yard, this is the way I would suggest that they do it, so I want to see exactly how that holds up. The whole reason we're doing this in Florida is because this is not heavy clay. This is really, really loose sand. As you can see, we can dig all these holes with post hole diggers. If we can prove that this works here, it should work almost everywhere. Dan, why you cut so many corners? You're not a real professional if you don't use concrete. Well, we're going to show you. Can you be a professional and not use concrete? So the first section that we're going to test is a 6 foot tall white vinyl privacy fence, 8 foot centers, set 2 feet deep on steel. Now, I didn't do this because I felt like 2 foot was going to be adequate. We did this to test how much faster it fails than some of the other variations. We use things called rail locks. I fully expect that we will see the panels hold together better, but eventually we may still lose pickets. The rails, however, I don't feel that the rails will come out of the post.
I maxed out way long back.
Yeah, so he got 115. We did not make this fence fail. We could not make it fail. That boat was maxed out, correct? That's all you can do. That was it. That was it. In the wide open, that's 120 some mile an hour wind load rating. And we couldn't get this fence to fail. What we do see, and what I would call a failure, is the fact that now we've got this. So this steel post is probably still perfectly fine. These down here are still good, and they're still solid. This one didn't even fail, but this is the one that had the direct hit. Big, big difference, and we never even got this section to blow apart. Because of these rail locks and everything that we did, this is cool. This is so cool. I'm so stoked. She ain't bent. That is a soil failure there, not a pipe failure. Looks pretty straight to me, and that's all the deeper we were in there. We should definitely be deeper. That's not good enough. So the next one up, 6 foot tall white vinyl fence. So remember down in the last test that we did 6 foot sections and they still blew apart. Here we have 8 foot sections, 2 feet longer, and we've got steel 3 feet in the ground. So still no concrete, all these are driven. You can see we didn't dig any holes anywhere. There's no concrete. Steel post probably stops somewhere right about here, I'm gonna guess. We're maxing this machine out. Full RPMs, we're hitting it way longer than we ever did with any of these others and still can't get it to fail. Oh, I still can't pull it out. You can see this post is probably a little bit out of plumb, but not bad, right? And nothing blew apart. We want to try and get this fence to fail. That if we kick the rudder in, we give it some different oscillations in the wind, then maybe that'll make a difference. So we're gonna go ahead and hit this full bore and kick some rudder in and see if we can get something to blow apart. Okay, what we do have now is, I would say, this post is probably ready to come out.
This thing's still separated.
Fixed, definitely loose. There's a good chance this post is bent and it's a little bit loose. This is definitely a worst case scenario.
You can pull it. You gotta work pretty hard at it though.
Yeah, you still gotta work for it, but it'll come. We're gonna show you what it looks like when objects go hurtling through hurricane force winds into things. And maybe we can get it to fail then. So that's the key. You got to keep all the pickets in. The interlocking features is what makes this thing strong. My stool is still good though. The only thing I'm looking for here is to see if it stays better without getting loose. That's really all I'm looking for. See, still got those stupid rail locks. Those rail locks really work. It's the slightest bend. This is totally repairable. And your material is probably all still good. Even if the pipe bends, you can bend the pipe back. And there's repair methods for all of this stuff with minimal amounts of labor and effort. Let's see what 3.5 does. See if we get any better results out of that. I got 90, that's the highest one yet.
I max.
111.5.
Dude, that fence is in amazing shape. So the only thing that happened is this post spun. Like, it's still tight. This is incredibly tight. And I think it probably bent the post just a little bit. The cure for that, SS40. This is only 20 weight.
There it goes.
Oh, we got it. I love it. I love it. We got pickets to fall out, but did we get anything else to happen? No. Yeah, this is still tight. This is how we build fences. Literally, this is exactly how we do it. This is our method. It's what we do. It's what I believe in. Man, I'm excited. Okay, so I know we didn't ride on this one. 8 foot tall, 6 foot wide sections. These are 7/8 by 2 rails. And please note, all these fences were built with 2 by 7 rails. Most of the fences that are built around here are done with 1.5 by 5.5. And cool story, we did a fence repair where we disassembled the customer's an entire fence because somebody built it and they used 1.5 by 5.5 rails top and bottom, and then it was a 7/8 by 3 sandwiching the 8 foot pickets on both sides. Did the repairs, another hurricane came through and I went back and videoed it, and you could see the stuff we had not repaired waving all over the place, and the stuff that we had repaired was rock solid. It was amazing to see. The most important thing when you're driving posts is it has to be in good, firm, undisturbed soil. If you're trying to do this in an old post hole, it's not gonna work. You've got to do extra depth. You have to have firm soil, means you've got to recompact all that soil into the hole if you're gonna do this. So keep that in mind. So let's try and blow this thing apart. I got the highest one I've got so far at 75.3.
I got 116.
My guy just gives up, says, yeah, you win.
When I'm up there, I can feel, I mean, we get a horrible swirl. It's swirling all over the place, which is why we, at the very beginning of this, when we tested this boat, we just wanted straight line winds out behind the boat, and we were getting 123. That's what kind of force you know is hitting this fence. Didn't get anything to pop apart. I don't see a loose post, but I definitely see a bent post. And if this is your fence and you're trying to fix that, that's an easy repair. You bend the post back, done. It's that easy. You don't even take anything apart. Let's fix it. Let's fix it, guys. So now you know how to build the world's toughest vinyl fence. Now that we know how the vinyl stacked up, we wanted to know if there was any change when we switched to wood. Does a different material make a difference? Because we got a 4x4 solid wood post now, as opposed to a hollow vinyl post. Is that gonna make any difference in how this structurally stands up over time? 1, 2, 3, let's blow! Wah! So the first fence we're gonna test is a horizontal treated pine privacy fence. And these are 5/4 boards spaced a 1/2 inch apart. We don't expect that that is gonna make a huge difference on the wind load rating of this particular fence. And it is on 4x4 posts. So there's 2 feet of post in the ground, which is very common, and not 1 bag of concrete, but concrete bottom to top. And that's probably 2 60-pound bags of concrete, which is highly unusual for here in Florida. The point of doing that is because we don't want the concrete to fail. I want to see if we set these posts correctly, if the wood can withstand the wind. We already know if you don't use enough concrete and it's not good enough and you don't do it right, then the fence will lean. But that's not what we're testing here today. We want to see if this thing will snap off. I hope it does.
Oh, oh. No
It's
move.
true, nothing moved.
Oh, we got a little bit of movement.
Oh yeah, there we go. Yeah, so we got, you can see that. That middle post, and that's because all that wind's directed right there at the middle post. So as we've seen on all the other fences that we've tested, but if this is a long run of fence, it'd be all the middle posts. All the middle posts would be were blown out. So what we're gonna do now, just like the rest of them, we're gonna kick some rudder in, give it a couple little wind direction changes with full RPM and see if that makes a difference at all. Because it's that action, I think, when it becomes inflexible that can make things snap. I have actually seen these fence posts snap off in Wyoming due to wind.
She's leaning. She's leaning.
They're all leaning about the same then. She's wiggling a good bit.
Concrete's all snapped. I mean, this is all brand new fresh wood though. I mean, you're gonna have a hard time getting it to fail. It's usually a few years down the road after it's sat out there in the elements and
At least in our area. Now in Florida, it's always wet. But after it's started to rot and stuff, that's when we're gonna see those posts snapping. And the drier it is in our area, we get really dry wood. And as it dries out, then it gets more brittle. And then when you have those things where it's flexing, it just falls over. Cedar is a lot weaker. I think we could probably snap off a cedar post, no problem. But obviously the big drawback to the treated posts is they're even gonna rot. A treated post here in Florida, realistically, probably gonna get about 10 years out of them. Other things we're noticing is because we use such a small hole, the concrete's broke, and I think that's why this post here is moving, I think, but I'm not 100% positive. If this post was set maybe 3 feet deep instead of 2 feet deep, it probably would not be wiggling quite this bad. This also goes to methods of construction, and the way you go about installing your fence really matters when you start taking wind into account.
I'd say it was a small hole, but to us, small hole's 9 inches. That's a 9-inch hole.
Yeah,
Substantially bigger than a lot of the holes you see.
yeah,
You know, a lot of the holes you see is just a post hole digger width,
which is 6. Like
which is
6,
about
maybe
6
7.
inches.
Which means the corners of your concrete break out the minute anything hits it because you have a thin layer of concrete and it's just not that strong. So it's still in there, but this is why fences lean. And again, we use way more concrete, twice as much as what most people are using here in Florida. It's 1 60-pound bag and we ended up using 2. It didn't blow over though. It didn't, and I'm disappointed. This is anticlimactic. I want something to break. Hey, so what we're gonna do with this one, this is a standard 6-foot stockade. Set almost exactly like that one. The only difference is it's 6 inches further in the ground, so we have a 2.5-foot set depth, and it's stockade. So the pickets are a little bit lighter. That has rails for the horizontal member instead of the boards. We'll see if that makes any difference whatsoever. Let's blow.
I got max.
We got max wind. That's definitely moved that center post. Yeah, that's a failure there. Concrete's just not good enough. If we could keep the concrete from flexing and keep everything rigid, but just like a skyscraper sways, we always say that the strongest isn't always something that's perfectly rigid. Something needs to sway a little bit and have a little bit of give, and the post base failing is actually helping the fence, not helping it stay straight, but it's helping it from snapping off. If we had a perfectly rigid concrete cylinder that couldn't move, I think that we'd see these posts potentially fail, and gusts of wind, you know, hitting it from different directions. Right now, the 4x4 posts they're standing up, but they're gonna need some fixing after a big strong wind, that's for sure. No way around that. I feel like that thing is so close to snapping. Like, just snap already. Just snap. I need a Sawzall blade.
If your sand wasn't there, and I think if the ground conditions were like Wyoming,
It'd snap, it'd snap. If there wasn't any give here, this thing would be gone. The problem is the soil's giving away and that's making it flex and the concrete broke. If this thing was rigid, that thing would, cause man, it's moving so much, that thing would be gone. I just know it'd be gone. So hey, we got your back. You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna simulate a little bit of rot. This thing needs to leave the chat. Needs to end up over there. Hey, you got some of that rapid rot? I need some rapid rot right here. We're gonna call this 3 years of weed eating and decay. So what we're cutting is about from the tip to about here. So you're losing about 1 inch of really good post all the way around. The other thing that's making this fence a little bit stronger is the fact that we do have 16-foot boards here. There's no splice in the middle, and each one of these boards is actually adding strength to this fence as opposed to a 6-foot stockade where we don't have that. This right here, this. You see this? This is what the problem was. There's so much moisture, all those fibers pulled out from up inside the post. Wet wood is super, super strong. Let this dry out and then it's gone. I wish we had some dry stuff. Maybe on the next one, we'll test some super dry stuff and we can figure out how to make some wind in Wyoming where the climate's drier to show what happens to fences in Wyoming. But for right now, 4x4s are pretty tough until they start to rot. That's what I'd say. We don't always get the results we're looking for or we expect, but we're gonna show you exactly what happened. So this is what it took to break this fence. It was still incredibly strong. But one of the things I wanna make very clear is that that wood was extremely wet, and wet wood has a lot more flex to it and it's not gonna snap and break. What we find here when we actually have wind and that wood fence has been up for a while, it becomes a lot more rigid, and when things become more rigid, it actually becomes more weak because that force has to act on something. And so it bounces it back and forth, and then what we see is the post actually just straight up snapping off. That's exactly what we would expect to see had that wood been a little bit drier. So now that we know all that, what we'd like to see is how our Trident posts, which are a metal wood post replacement that is actually much easier to use, stand up to the wind. Bear in mind that these have a 76-mile-an-hour wind load rating from the manufacturer, but we're wanting to test it to failure, and we're gonna see exactly how that holds up right now. And today what we're gonna do is we're gonna test how durable an engineered steel replacement for a 4x4 post is. There's a lot of discussion about whether or not it's stronger or not, how much stronger it is. We already know that it won't rot, but is it actually stronger when it comes to a wind test? So we're gonna compare it to the last video. To keep things even, we are doing a horizontal pressure-treated pine privacy fence as the first test, and then after this is done, we'll move to the stockade test built on the same steel post replacement for a 4x4. This is going to be the first. The one thing we do know about this stuff is it is incredibly heavy. These boards are not fun to pack into a backyard. So we know there's a lot of weight on this fence. It was just built, it's totally green. So let's see what it takes to knock it down, or if we can knock it down. That was 100.
110.
We know that the wind is incredibly high. We've blown the grass clean. Like you can see how much it's basically picked up the soil and blown this clean, just like all of our other tests. So the question is this fence at all destroyed? No. This fence is in extremely good shape. So what we noticed when we did the test on the 4x4 post is that the concrete gave way. And we didn't even talk about one of the secret things. We forgot to mention in the beginning of this that this fence has a secret. And its secret is there's no concrete. Notice how there's no dirt here? We didn't dig any holes for this. Instead of digging holes, we pounded these posts 4 feet deep. We used 10-foot posts, covered them up so you can't even see them. So this side looks just like the other side almost. And this is still in good shape. There's nothing wrong with this fence. We saw the other one start leaning because we didn't have enough depth in the ground when we did the test on the 4x4 post, but because we have the added depth and no concrete to break out, this fence is totally fine. There's nothing wrong with this fence. I'm gonna say that the worst thing is maybe this post bent just a little bit, Yeah, that didn't move it. So I think this post in the middle bent just ever so slightly. Now, to be fair, the last time when we couldn't get something to destroy, we shifted some rudder in. So we're gonna give it some rudder, if that's all right with you, John. Let's give it the worst case scenario again and see if we can get a post to bend at least. That would make me, well, it wouldn't make me happy because I want to build the best fences, but it'd make you happy, I'm sure of it. Yeah, we got it tipped really nice. We're trying to give this the absolute worst case scenario because that's what we want to do, is we want to build fences to our worst case scenario here in Florida and across Wyoming, because many people don't realize just how windy it is in Wyoming, and I brought all that knowledge about wind with me to Florida, and I'm always thinking about how to build the best fences to withstand the wind, because that is our biggest nemesis, wind and rot, as far as I'm concerned, and sun. Now that did something. We got some lean out of her.
That's a lot of wind.
That's a lot of wind. That is a lot of really, really hard wind. I'm gonna guess we're probably in the 120 range with wind, and it's as close as we can get it and as hard as we can get it. Should be a worst case scenario. Now, this fence is leaning. I will give you that. But Alan, can we fix this?
Yeah, I can fix that.
How hard is it to fix this?
Not very hard.
You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna come over here, and because it's steel, we're just gonna plumb it back up, bend it back straight, and boom, we're done. Yeah, we went a little far. A little more cowbell, a little more. Yep, you're good, it's straight. There, it's done. It was that easy. To fix a 4x4, what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to dig down next to it, push it over, and then put concrete in the void, re-add concrete, and we know that it's probably just gonna push it together because the two pieces of concrete poured at two different times are not at all bonded together. So
What's the life expectancy of one of these posts?
I'm gonna give it at least 25 years.
25 years before it does what? Because it's not gonna rot, right?
Well, it's not gonna rot, but you still have the potential for rust.
Correct.
To look at that and people say, well, you don't have anything, there's no concrete or there's nothing protecting it, but chain link fences have been built like this for decades and decades, and we remove them all the time. And as long as you have good thick steel, I'm gonna say you're probably gonna get 3 times the lifespan out of one of these posts that you will get out of a wood 4x4. To say that you're gonna get a lifetime may not happen, but you're definitely gonna forget that you had a warranty by the time it fails, and probably have sold the house 5 times. So very, very good product, what we believe in, and this is what we use for all of our fences. Number one, because we can install them very easily, it adds strength, and as you've also noticed, there's no mess. You gotta like not having a mess in your yard when you're done building a brand new beautiful fence like the mess that's over there on those. And these are still solid. It's ready to go for the next wind. That's all I have to say about that one. No, that's a bad idea. Hey, what are we gonna do here? Well, this is the fence that we built to test and realized that it wasn't really gonna yield anything. So we're gonna just go for broke. We're gonna back this thing up on the back side, because the last time we pressed on everything so that it was pushing the 2x4s towards the fence. However, we're going to try and press the opposite way that we did on everything else, so that we're, again, putting pressure on the fasteners. So if there's a weak point in the fasteners, we can figure that out. I think we can probably put a little slight bend on these, but I really want to check the fasteners and see if there's any weakness in the fasteners. But without further ado, let it blow. When we tested the horizontal fence, we didn't see that much flex. We got a lot more out of this, and I'll tell you why I think that happened. We don't have those horizontal boards spanning 3 posts, so we don't get that additional strength from our horizontal members. And so it allowed the fence to flex further. However, just like the horizontal fence, this is an easy repair. We go on the other side, we bend this thing back straight, and we're done. Hey, you wanna do that? Let's bend this thing straight. Let's show them.
Oh, a little much.
This one's bent. No more. Hey, it's fixed. But even though the posts flexed and bent just a little bit, the footing itself is not at all unstable. Because we drove these and the soil is firm, everything below grade is still fine. It just bent the posts ever so slightly, which we're easily able to fix. And we are testing these in the absolute worst case scenario. Not sustained winds, but we're blowing on them with the highest winds that we can get out of the boat, which is roughly 123 miles an hour. That's why we use these posts. They don't rot. They're extremely durable. They're extremely tough. And if you do need to make repairs, repairs are super simple. And there's no mess in your yard because guess what? We didn't have to dig any holes for all these. And can I pull this thing out? No, I can't.
Hey, before we end the video, I just want to clarify something here. I know what you're thinking. You probably saw that last video where we used a 4x4 post, and this video where we're using a Postmaster post. I'm not going to buy the Postmaster post when I can buy a 4x4 post. Oh, that's almost the same product. Today, we're testing a brand new 4x4 post. We could test this in 5 years. That 4x4 post is going to fail, whereas the Postmaster post is still going to be just as strong as it was the day it was installed. Not to mention that if you have a concrete failure, it's a lot harder to put the post back and do a repair. Now back to you, Mark.
If there's something you think we missed in all of this, let us know down below. We know you keyboard warriors are out there and you're just dying. You're just jonesing to tell us all the ways we screwed it up. So we've used this nice fence here as a backdrop. Now understand too that this fence stood for years and years. I think this fence has been in place probably for 30 years plus. It just takes that one event, and that one event can actually lead to the failure of your fence. Installation method matters and the materials that you're using matter. This is a 10-foot tall fence as an example, and the posts should have been fine. And the thing you're not seeing from all this is that they had some banners put on this fence, and those banners are actually what likely caused the failure. You'll also see that what we had happen when the wind did hit this is it didn't even knock over the whole thing. It only knocked over one section, and this is the section that got flopping hard enough, or maybe this is the section with the banners, more banners than another. But what you can see is that even though it had concrete in the ground, the post bent. And that's something really hard for people to understand is that just because it's concrete in the ground, the posts are not any stronger. The posts are still the weak spot, and that is actually what we find with our driven stuff. When driven to the correct depth, the posts will actually bend over right about like this, maybe just a little bit lower in the ground, but that's the same thing, same type of failure we're gonna see with a wind-blown fence if we use a driven method. So keep all these things in mind and make sure you're using the proper material and the proper installation techniques so you don't have this kind of failure. If I was going to build this fence for this customer and they said we're gonna put banners on it, we would upsize the post to the next size up and maybe even shrink the spacing just a little bit like we do on our 8-foot tall fence. Our 8-foot tall fence is not on 8-foot centers, but on 6-foot centers. So we get more posts with more support. So keep all that stuff in mind when you build your next fence. Make sure that you're using the right material and make sure you're using good, solid installation techniques. I'm Mark with SWI here in Wyoming, and until next time, I hope you have a better day than this fence had. I mean, I hope you have a good dang day, because if I don't say that, people are gonna get mad at me.